In this video, we'll take a look at how you can use Visio Professional to modify relationships between entities. Let's begin by looking at weak and strong relationships. Because the class entity's primary key does not contain any attributes borrowed from the course or parent entity, the relationship between course and class is non-identifying or weak. If you click on the relationship line and look at the miscellaneous selection in the categories window, you'll see that its relationship type is non-identifying at this point. Note that the relationship line is shown as a dashed line. Now suppose that you want to make the relationship between course and class a strong or identifying relationship. To make that change, first select the relationship line and then click on the identifying option. Note that the primary key of the course entity is now written in the class entity, and that the class entity's primary key is composed of course code plus class code. Also note that the relationship line is shown as a solid line. Let's go ahead and reset the relationship to non-identifying before we continue. Note that Visio Professional always makes sure that the primary key declaration matches the relationship type. If you want to insert new entities later, and you may have to, at least temporarily, detach the relationship line. Disconnect the relationship line from the many side by selecting the relationship line and dragging the many side away from the class entity. Note that the relationship line's many side now has a green square. You can repeat this process for the other side of the relationship, or you can select the relationship line and drag it away from both sides at once. You can reattach the relationship by dragging each end to its entity, the one side to the course entity and the many side to the class entity. Note that the relationship line's end must be dragged all the way inside the entity box until the entity box has a red outline. When the relationship line has been properly attached, the endpoints to the relationship line are shown as red blocks anytime you select it. To reflect the original business rules, make sure that the course is mandatory to class. Therefore, select the class entity and make the course foreign key required. If you want to delete a relationship line, just select it and then press the delete key on your keyboard, or select the delete option from the button bar at the top of your screen. At this point, our default options don't include the relationship name. To make sure that the relationship names always appear when they're declared, return to the database option at the top of your screen and select it. Next, select Options and then select Document. Select Show Verb Phrase. Note that this selection includes both forward text and inverse text. To avoid clutter in our ERDs, we usually click off the inverse text option. Click OK to accept the change. Select the relationship line, select its name from categories, and type in the verb phrases. Because we assume that the relationship is written course generates class and class is generated by course, type generates in lowercase in the verb phrase line, and then type is generated by in lowercase in the inverse phrase line. Now look at the relationship line and note that only the forward verb phrase generates shows in the relationship line. That's because we selected that option as the new default, remember? Naturally, you can also copy and paste relationships. For example, let's add a department entity and then relate department to course in a department offers course relationship. Before we do that, let's create some additional workspace on the grid by changing the zoom to 75%. Now let's create the department entity by dragging another entity object and dropping it on the grid. Let's name this entity Department. Let's now add two attributes to Department. Department Code, which is a character field, and that's the primary key, and Department Name, declared to be a variable character type. Incidentally, you may want to drag the new entity to another spot on the grid to make some space for a relationship line between department and course. Now click on any relationship line, we only have one at this point, and select Edit Copy and then Edit Paste. So change the relationship name to Offers And then let's change the inverse relationship name to is offered by. Attach the one side to department, and then attach the many side to course. Note that the new relationship line is shown as identifying, so let's change it back to non-identifying by selecting miscellaneous and then non-identifying. Make sure that the course is optional to department to reflect the possibility that some departments might not offer courses. And also make sure that department is mandatory to course. That's it. If you followed the directions in this video or in Appendix A of your text, you now know how to edit relationships among entities.